نبدأ الآن الجلسة الثالثة للمؤتمر تحت عنوان From Access to Empowerment Advancing Women Financial Inclusion. ويدير الجلسة مستر هاني الديب Head of SME Business Commercial International Bank CIB Egypt بمشاركة المتحدثين مس إنجي بوراي VP and Country Manager Mastercard Egypt، مس مهرشان نايل Financial Inclusion Strategy and Data Measurement Head Financial Inclusion Sector Central Bank of Egypt، Miss Andriana Florence, official at the Ministry of Economy and Finances, Madagascar. فليتفضلوا جميعاً لبدء الجلسة.
Hello everyone. Thank you very much EBI for this event. It's my pleasure and honor to be here today among the distinguished speakers. I'm proud that I'm representing the other gender with three successful ladies. Thank you very much. In today's panel, we'll be addressing the financial inclusion and women empowerment for Africa mainly, and what are the efforts that we had in terms of the regulators and government and the private sector to bridge the gap of the gender equality. So the main headline is women, financial inclusion, and Africa. And why women and financial inclusion in Africa? It's very basically. When you look at the population of Africa, we are now at around 1.5 billion citizens in Africa, expected to reach 2 billion in the next 5 years. That's a huge. And at the same time, when you look at the GDP size and the population, by the way, we are the second. Africa is the second in terms of the population. And from the GDP size, we are now, Africa is the fifth place. And when we say fifth place, we are almost least in terms of GDP compared to the main continents, Asia, Europe, and North and South America. So there is something that's not working. Given the massive resources in Africa and the population, I think Africa deserves more than that. When we dig deep on the demographics, we can see like around 50% of the population are female. Can you imagine the unutilized capacity within the continent? That's massive. And we can achieve more and more impact in terms of GDP growth and economic activity as well. So I think now the answer is very clear why women want financial inclusion and why Africa specifically. And I believe at the same time, I think this, in order to have this happen, I think it has to be a very comprehensive collaboration model between regulators and central banks, between governments and policymakers, and for sure private sector. And I think this is very well represented in today's panel. So let me introduce our distinguished speakers. We're having Mehrechane Nayel, the Financial Inclusion Strategy and Data Measurement Head at the Central Bank of Egypt. Ingi Borai, Vice President and Country Manager, Mastercard Egypt. And Andriana Florence, the Chief of Staff at the Ministry of Economy and Finance at Madagascar government. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you for today. So I'll start the first question with Mehrechane, if you allow me. Given the women economic empowerment and the financial inclusion is a core focus of the central bank in Egypt. And it's perfectly aligned with Egypt's strategy and vision, Sustainable Development Strategy and Vision 2030. So could you please highlight on the recent CBE initiatives to advance women financial inclusion and how it helped to creating a shared value on the national level, not only on central bank?
Thank you, Hany, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm very pleased to be among such distinguished panelists. And I basically want to start off also by welcoming our African colleagues here, because basically we have a lot of consultation and coordination through our membership in the Alliance for Financial Inclusion, which is the first platform for central banks and ministries of finance working worldwide, on the topic of financial inclusion. So we do have a lot of also collaboration with a number of African countries, whereby we share a lot of peer reviews. We learn from each other through a number of forums that we established under this platform. And to go to your question, Hany, basically gender equality and women's economic empowerment is a core focus of the Central Bank of Egypt's development policy agenda. And we take it really as a strategic objective that we are pursuing along our primary objective of ensuring the stable and sound financial system. Why is that? As we all know, Egyptian women constitute half of the population, and as such, empowering them and including them in the financial system could really have a lot of progress, and improvement on the economy at large. And we've seen before a World Bank report saying that if women labor participation is being given the same those as male, this could really have like an increase in the GDP by 34%. Having all of that, financial inclusion is not really an easy topic. It really requires a lot of collaboration among the various stakeholders, be it the government, be it the private sector, development partners. And that's why we are also taking it and complementing the government efforts under the Egypt Vision 2030 and the National Council for Women's strategy on women's economic empowerment, whereby we took a strategy, to develop a gender inclusive financial system that looks at the barriers, that face women and men and everybody, be it on the supply or demand side, in order for us, to be able to derive the appropriate policy interventions for all of them. And in that respect, while we started, to work on our development of the financial inclusion strategy, we really had like a multi-pronged approach. We wanted to really have it as a national strategy that is really based on all the objectives and needs of all stakeholders. And from that perspective, we established an external data committee with all the stakeholders, all the ministries that have any kind of data from FRA, from the Solidarity Finance, everybody was around the table in order to agree on the indicators for financial inclusion. Because for us to be able, to develop any kind of strategies, we really have to have a set of core indicators that we all agree upon. We had to agree on the age for the population, those that are eligible for financial inclusion. Is it 18, 21, or 16? And at the end, that was the age that was agreed upon, 16. We had to agree also on what is formal and what is informal when it comes to including the informal sector. And from that perspective, that was the first core for us, was really the data set. And from there, we established, our financial inclusion strategy that was really capitalizing on 3 enablers and 4 main pillars. Of course, the regulatory framework was the first enabler for us, and in that respect we established and we launched for the first time in our central bank law of 2020 a definition for financial inclusion that really looks at the 3 dimensions of inclusion, from access, usage, and quality. Because of course access and usage, this is very easy for us to get, from the supply side data that we get from the banks, yet the quality really requires more work, and we probably touch upon it later on. And we also had, apart from the financial inclusion definition, we issued a simplified KYC, to also help those that really needs to be included in the financial system to be able to just go and with their own ID to be able to open a bank account. We had a number of activation campaigns where banks are able to go outside of the premises, reach out, to those that are really deprived from being able to go to the bank's branches or the post office or any other financial institutions that provides these kind of services. We worked on economic activity account to enable especially young women and youth and people with determinations, entrepreneurs, startups, the MSMEs, everybody who is really in the country and would like to really have access to these kind of accounts is now able to have it. And we've had a number of other series of legal and regulatory reforms, that I'm sure you're all aware of, so I won't really touch on it in details. And next to it, we had, of course, second and really big pillar was the financial technology and digital infrastructure. And this is really driven by our fintech strategy at the Central Bank of Egypt, whereby we have the sandbox, to enable a lot of also fintechs to try to really feel how could it really go without really the legal and regulatory framework. We have the phenology. We have a lot of other initiatives, driven by our fintech colleagues. And next to it, we had also the sustainable and economic growth, because without sustainable finance and economic growth, nothing can really continue. And I think you've all heard with the previous panel all the discussions about the sustainable finance, so I won't go into it. But then when we look at the pillars that are really driving our work on women's economic empowerment and youth, because women, as I said, they are mainstreamed along all sectors, so you'll find them, all segments, sorry. So you'll find them, in youth, you'll find them elderly, people with determination, everywhere. So basically, we worked on responsible finance, and that really covers the consumer protection regulations that were issued, to ensure that when the clients are really being given products, they're also given products in a very responsible manner to ensure, that they really know their rights. And next to it, we worked on the literacy aspect, literacy for the population, literacy for the policymakers, and literacy also for the institutions, that work in the financial inclusion space. This have really helped a lot, like with the project for digital lending and saving. I think the literacy part in it was really quite tremendous, to bring on board a lot of those women that are currently involved in the Tahwisha project. Helping them to know how to really save in a digital manner and not really through a traditional box, where they save and get to collect every week, was really quite important. If we look at other aspects, we have, of course, the second pillar that we have is centricity, or customer centricity, whereby we really incentivize banks to go out of the premises, try to really reach out to the clients, understand what are their needs so that they can really design products that really meets the needs of the clients. And here it's again with activation campaigns during the Arab Financial Inclusion Day, Women Day, Youth Day, Savings Day. These are opportunities for the banking sector to go outside of their branches, get in contact with the clients, do financial literacy, understand what are their needs, together with some other opportunities like Haya Karima, Decent Life, for instance. This was an opportunity for the banks and the financial system to go along with the government while they are establishing infrastructure from water, sanitation, whatever, and then also try to promote financial inclusion in those most deprived areas in rural governorates. When we look at the third pillar that we're working on is, of course, the ecosystem for MSMEs. And we've also heard a lot today about Nayelpreneur and the BDS hubs and all what is being done, in the space of MSMEs. Yet, I think the digitization was really quite important because, digitizing the payment and disbursement for microfinance institutions was really key. We have like 70% of those, beneficiaries for microfinance in Egypt are women. So digitizing, the payments was really quite crucial, including a lot of those women into the financial system. The scaling up of Takaful and Karama programs for social conditional transfer and transferring it from cash transfer into digital transfer have also helped in adding 4.5 million women. We have a lot of other projects like the remittances projects, also international remittances, whereby 85% of those beneficiaries from international remittances are women. So we try to really work in close consultation and coordination with a lot of ministries in Egypt, because again, financial inclusion is not only the mandate of the central bank. Of course, each and every one from the stakeholders in the country has a role to play and has really responsibility towards advancing financial inclusion. So we could really be like very happy to offer all kinds of digital tools we have. Yet if there is no uptake from the ministries or from those authorities, it cannot really go well. The impact of all these efforts and initiatives have really been quite successful and tangible, because now we see like we have 20.3 million women that are included out of 32 million women that are eligible, to be part of the financial system. And this is basically 244% growth rate from 2016. So we started really from very low rate of inclusion for women, yet with all these collaborations with the various ministries and the various stakeholders, all in alignment to the Egypt Vision 2030, we were able to really improve the financial inclusion of women and men at the same time. And I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mehrechane. So from financial literacy, digital transformation, MSME efforts, and a lot of efforts that's being done by the central bank. And as you rightly said, it's not only the mandate of the central bank, it has to be a collaboration model between all stakeholders. So let me move to the private sector. Ingi is presenting MasterCard. So I know with over 20 years of experience and operations in the Egyptian market, I'm sure you have faced a lot of challenges, opportunities, and successes as well, for sure. Now, building on Mehrechane's efforts in the central bank, what are the strategies and technologies that is being adopted by MasterCard to boost the progress of the financial inclusion in Egypt, especially for women?
Thank you so much for the question, Hany, and I really would like to thank EBI for their kind invitation today. MasterCard financial inclusion is such an integral part of our DNA. In 2020, we renewed our global vow towards ensuring that we reach 1 billion individuals to be financially included in the digital payment ecosystem by 2050. And we're working very closely with central banks, with technology service providers, with the banking ecosystem, with fintechs, with regulators, in order to make sure that we leverage the 3 key drivers for success. So MasterCard is a technology company at heart, so we are happy to bring the innovation and to avail the tools, but we are an enabler, and we find that these tools can only go as far as there is an environment around them that actually absorbs these tools, internalizes them, and ensures that they are aligned with local culture. So that's why someone like Money Fellows, for example, in Egypt is so successful, because they were able to take the idea of a jam'iyya, which is so well integrated into our culture, and put it on technology rails. So by digitizing something people are familiar with, you maximize the chance of the success of that initiative, as opposed to taking a brand new mechanism of saving that people might not be familiar with and trying to push that out and force adoption and education simultaneously. The other element that's key is financial literacy, and I'm very happy Mehrechane spoke about that, because it's not enough to just give people the tool. It's very important that we ensure that they are actually financially empowered, that they know what they're doing, they know how to use the tool, they know what advantages they have, what opportunities they have, what kind of finance they can actually access and unlock, and what kind of steps they can take in their daily lives to actually enhance their own credit score and be able to unlock even greater finance futuristically. So technology is very important, literacy and awareness is very important. And the third part is actually making sure that that small sort of window of financial literacy that they have, or the tool that is available to them, actually links well with a much larger ecosystem. So for example, I'm very happy that we're collaborating with civil society here in Egypt and an NGO called BSR on financial literacy of women in the ready-made garment industry. So we're basically looking at workers who normally would get paid daily or weekly and would conventionally get paid in cash. But we actually partnered with CIB and with the Levi Strauss factory in Port Said. And what we did was we gave those women a wallet. Like, I'm not even saying we gave them a card. We gave them a wallet, just like entry-level financial inclusion. And on that wallet, we were able to teach them that, you know what? Your money is your money. You get to control how that money is spent. You get to control the flow of information about that wallet. How much am I making? How much of it am I spending in the house? And then I can add a slightly more advanced layer. You want to save? From that wallet, with other people with wallets, you can start a jam'iyya. So it's about understanding that it's a journey and that it's going to be step by step. And it's very important for them to feel comfortable with the tools, with the technology, settle at the first level before we start adding those layers of complexity. But at the same time, as Mehrechane was saying, and as Hany opened in his opening remarks, development truly is a group sport. like as we align our incentives and we align our objectives towards the greater vision of Egypt, the Sustainable Development Strategy of 2030, and the central bank strategy on financial inclusion, it's important for all the different players in the ecosystem to actually come together collaboratively in order for us to see that success and for us to have solutions that are scalable and that we can replicate. So whatever we did really well in the ready-made garment space, we can take and replicate with a different industry or a different set of factories, so that the 9,000 workers we're reaching today can be multitudes and multitudes of that. So I think that's very crucial as we speak about financial inclusion in Egypt.
Thank you very much, Angie. So it's all about technology, digitizing the process. It has to be localized to fit into the culture of Egypt and Africa as well. And again, the financial literacy. One more comment that I really like is the sectorial penetration. You start with the textile industry and then you will replicate the success in different other industries. Thank you very much. So, Andriana, thank you very much for coming today. We are very happy of having you in Cairo and the panel. So we got to know a lot of efforts that's being done by the regulator in the Central Bank of Egypt. A lot of efforts that's being aligned with the efforts that are happening in the central bank from the private sector, MasterCard. So being the representative of the government arm or the state of Madagascar, what are the collaboration and the relationship that is happening between the government and the financial inclusion agenda for women in Madagascar?
Ladies and gentlemen, in your grades and qualities, good afternoon. Speaking about the Cairo and collaboration between Madagascar state and the promotion of women's financial inclusion, the government general policy of Madagascar is based on three major pillars. First, human capital. Second, industrialization and economic transformation. And third, governance. Financial inclusion plays an essential role in the activities implemented to support these pillars. It aims to ensure that all individual and business, particularly those who are disadvantaged and marginalized, have access to basic financial services such as bank account, loans, insurance, and payment service. A number of initiatives and programs are in Madagascar, including the annual Global Money Week event coordinated by Ministry Economy and Finance, droit the national coordination of inclusive finance, and learning the importance of promotion finance inclusion, whose theme for this year was protect your money, secure your future. Within our ministry too, you have recently opted for a study on the designated materials of financial education, and still within the framework of innovation, the aim is to develop devices for mitigating financial risk and strengthening financial inclusion, particularly for women and young people, and jointly with the United Nations Development Programme, PNUD, for the diversification of the economy of Madagascar project and the national coordination of inclusive finance within the financial department operations.
Thank you very much. So it's the main three pillars is. So the main three pillars are human capital, economic transformation, and financial literacy as well, and industrialization as well. Thank you very much. So back to Mehrechane. In any strategic agenda, there are a lot of efforts that's being done in the market. Some goes well, some did not go as well as planned. However, the good thing that we learn from the experiences and we go through trial and error, and at the same time, I think the most important that we understand the key points and understand the market and what are the market needs in them. So it's called this evidence-based policy-making approach. So, from your experience in the last few years, how the gender disaggregated data and the work undertaken to promote the gender diversity and the gender gap have translated really to a policy that is being followed in the market so far?
Thank you, Hany. I think one of the main challenges we were really confronted with when we started off with our financial inclusion journey back already in 2013 was basically the scarcity of data and sex disaggregated data. So there was no data to start with, or sex disaggregated data or gender disaggregated data that really can help us to understand what are the barriers and the needs of the population. One issue was, as you all know, we have a number of regulatory institutions in the country. So we have the Financial Regulatory Authority that is looking into the non-banking financial instruments. We have the Central Bank of Egypt, and we have, of course, the Ministry of Telecom for the Egypt Post. And each of those institutions, they were really collecting the data in a different manner. And it was really quite crucial for us if we really want to build comprehensive database on the supply side that we really agree on a unique identifier that would enable us to understand, what kind of inclusion rate do we have and who is included, how is he included, and to be able to maintain this database for so long. And of course, the first thing that we started with was basically a gap analysis on the supply side that really showed us that we were really like above 100%, because if we really put all the numbers coming from these three institutions, it was above 100%. So financial inclusion is done and we can go home. And that's when we started to look at what kind of other maybe unique identifiers we could use. And that's when we looked at the unique identifier of any Egyptian, the national ID, because it has a gender identification. It has also identification of the governorates of birth, the date of birth. So it has a lot of data. Is it male, female? It has a lot of data that could really help us to build a comprehensive database on the supply side. We started off with this one, and basically since maybe 2018, we're collecting the data in a gender segregated manner. So when we looked at the issue, we identified the solution, and then we mandated the banks, to report on monthly basis to the central bank on this electronic database that is collecting the data gender segregated. And also we get the data from the Egypt Post. So also Egypt Post is on board, and we get the data from the microfinance institutions through iScore. So this scarcity of data, this is how we were able to overcome it. And these were maybe the regulations that were aligned with it, or at least how did we really go from a challenge to a policy intervention, to build this data hub, to collect the data, and to inform our policy interventions. Of course, the data that's coming from the supply side is only informing us about the access and usage. And it was very important also to align the definitions on the dormancy accounts at the banking sector, so that all banks are defining, the dormant account the same way, so that when we get the data on the data hub, we can really try to analyze it and understand, because we only count the active accounts, into the financial inclusion rate. So we do not take the dormant accounts. Of course, we also were confronted with the issues that, let's say, the data that is coming from MNOs through the banking sector is mostly active. And we really needed to also put their system to ensure that the data that we're getting from the banking sector, when it comes to mobile wallets, it's also defined in a proper manner. So the central bank issued the regulations also for active and inactive wallets. And for us to be able to maintain and ensure that the data that is coming is correct, we also mandated the banks to provide the data with a financial transaction and a non-financial transaction date to ensure that the data that is coming is correct. This is all to ensure that our numbers are unique. There is no duplication. So if a client has like 4 or 5 type of accounts, he's only counted one time. If he is available at the banking sector in Egypt Post, he's also counted at one time. So this was the first issue, the scarcity of data, and this is how we dealt with it and what kind of policies came out of it. The second issue was the diversity, of the Egyptian population. As we all know, we have a diversified, economy, and we have diversified also population, and it was very important, to understand what are the needs and the requirements of this population when it comes to financial service, be it individual or MSMEs. And from that perspective, we went into conducting in 2020 the first ever national representative demand side surveys. We actually conducted 2, one for the household, including the formal and informal sector, and one for the MSMEs. And these surveys, the findings and the information that we got out of it was quite instrumental, in developing our evidence-based financial inclusion strategy. One issue, for instance, that of course penetration of mobile phones in Egypt and internet is quite high. Yet when we were really interviewing the women in the field, when we went for this demand side survey, a lot of them, they said that they didn't know how to use a mobile phone. They didn't know that this technology exists. Some of others, they said, we do not really know that within our segment, we really can go, and have a financial service, be it from the post or the bank. So there was a lot of identification of issues that has to do with financial literacy, a lot of issues that has to do also with digital literacy. And these have all been taken forward, with a lot of policy interventions and a lot of actions on the ground that are currently happening in order to push, and advance the state of financial inclusion of those women in Egypt. The last part, and this is a very success factor that we all look at it, is alignments. We cannot really work in different silos. We had to really be aligned, all of us, in terms of regulatory authorities, in terms of also aligning with the private sector, the development partners, the NGOs, and everybody, in order to really have like a very solid financial inclusion strategy, not just only on the strategy for policies, but also on the data collection. Again, and this was really quite informative. It was, we've had indicators for women's financial inclusion that is also published on our website, and it's also informing, our development of policies and collecting the data. So when we conducted the demand side survey, we did also a lot of stakeholder consultations with the banking sector to see who needs what kind of data. So, and a lot of them were really like, yeah, we're interested in the youth segments, we're interested in MSMEs. And this is how, the banks are taking these data and trying to use it again, add to it, do more in-depth, analysis in order to design their own policy interventions as well, and product and design. So data is quite crucial. I think it's worldwide, not just in Egypt. The gender segregated data is quite important. We've also issued the women-owned and led business definition in collaboration with the IFC, also to understand the size of the market and to understand the needs of the women, in the MSME space. So this is how, we really took the challenges and transformed it into opportunities, and then afterwards into policy interventions. Because the thing is, for private sector or public sector to drive any kind of investments, they really need data to take informed decisions. So without the data, this is a foundation for anything. And this is where everything really needs to start. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's amazing. I totally agree with you. Data is the key. So between data capturing and reviewing definitions, so the first one, and between the other one is the gender diversity and data disaggregated data, and finally the alignment with other stakeholders, which is very important. I'm building on the third point. Now we have a strategy, a very clear strategy, and we have the alignment and blessing from the leadership in the country, from the government, and we have policies from the regulators as well. On the private sector, at MasterCard, how does MasterCard is unlocking the power of partnerships? So the collaboration with other financial institutions and non-financial institutions as well in Egypt. How do you tackle this unleashed potential in terms of partnerships in order to boost more on the financial inclusion and women agenda? And how this is aligned with the overall corporate strategy from MasterCard International to achieve the strategic goals?
Sure. Let me just take a step back and maybe dwell on the data points for a second, and then I'll circle back to the point on partnerships. So at MasterCard, we really believe in talent, and especially talent here in this country. So when I joined 4 years ago, we had a relatively small office, and I was a COVID hire, so I joined July of 2020. And over the last 4 years, we've grown the office to almost threefold in terms of size. But the more significant part is we've taken a conscious decision to invest in Egypt and invest in talent in Egypt. So we've built a hub that's now based out of Cairo, of consultants, of data scientists, of data analytics engineers, and statisticians, that is actually catering to the entire region, Eastern Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And it's a hub that we're extremely proud of, and it's one we're continuing to foster and to grow. And the reason I'm making that statement is, as we speak about data challenges, once again, I want to sort of appreciate for a moment the incredible role technology can play in facilitating some of our data challenges. So, through working with this hub and with this team, it's extremely exciting to actually see the progress that has happened over the last few months from the explosion around artificial intelligence and machine learning, whether in Egypt or globally, and how we've been able to leverage and utilize Gen AI and different algorithms of machine learnings to address challenges around data completeness and data cleanliness, for lack of better terminology, and being able to actually create meaningful insights from that data. Whether this meaningful insight is, how can I adopt an innovative view on behavioral credit scoring? Or how can I actually match the financial tool to the individual based on their behavior in the market? Uh, so generally, a lot of the challenges that we're facing, technology can actually be a savior in that context and can actually come to the rescue. So that's just a point I wanted to flag. But if I circle back to Hany's original question on partnerships, at MasterCard, we really acknowledge that we cannot succeed on our own, and that our true role in this ecosystem is as an enabler, a catalyst to provide the underlying financial technology to really empower banks, fintechs, telcos to actually be the driver for financial inclusion in Egypt. And this is why we've partnered so closely with the Egyptian government, working with them on the MISA scheme infrastructure, working on the development of wallets that are now most known in the telco space, but which are also championed by banks in Egypt. So being able to really drive those financial tools that really foster inclusion and that are accessible by socioeconomic segments and customer segments that would normally have been um, finding cards a tough entry level financial tool to actually go for, and to actually observe those segments really adopt the wallet and to see the wallet numbers grow year over year, to see how much investment the banks and the telcos have actually made to add incremental use cases. So why just stop at person to person? Why not also look at person to merchant and actually boost acceptance and boost acquisitions? Why not look at use cases around things like personal financial management? So how am I empowering the person who owns this financial tool or who owns this wallet to actually analyze their own spend behavior? And this is why in the panel right before this, when we had four brilliant women talking about the progress that their respective banks have made, it was so nice to see them actually reference their banking apps, because it's that element of personal financial management that actually contributes to the idea of awareness and literacy. So I will be a more responsible spender if my bank is actually telling me, by the way, in a couple of weeks, you have the following check coming up. Are you sure you want to make this luxury purchase? Yes or no? We're monitoring your spend on groceries. There's been a change in pattern. If you continue to save at this rate, you'll be able to afford the vacation you're interested in. So it's that kind of personal financial management that could really be useful. And if you marry that with a layer of generative AI, so imagine uh, the bank application giving you insights on your spend, and then linking that to someone like a Siri or an Alexa that can then actually give you financial advice or give you some insights on, share that analysis with you to actually empower you to actually take action, whether that action is saving related, whether it's investment related, or whether it's just basic purchases. So I really value the power of our partnerships in the market, and I'm very grateful to the different parts of the ecosystem that have actually come together for us to really see that traction in financial inclusion, to see those number of wallets really grow month on month and year on year, to actually see the use cases become more and more complex and individuals really adopting those complex use cases. And in incidents or segments where we're unable to fully unlock with the wallet, when smartphone literacy might be an obstacle, we've seen some really interesting examples globally where it was SSD technology or SMS technology to actually empower or unlock several elements related to financial inclusion. So that's where we stand on this. And on the note that Mehrechane were talking about around talent and like inclusion from a gender lens for a second, we are championing a project globally called Girls for Tech, where we work with young women in STEM to actually help them access opportunities around coding or around technology around the world. And I know several other multinationals operating in this space in Egypt, and several banks and private sector companies are doing so. I think that initiative is something we need to collectively also agree is instrumental for our success, the success of any of our attempts at financial inclusion with a women lens or the gender lens, because we really need to believe that these women are capable and actually invest in them and direct them towards career choices and avenues that we normally were dismissive of, because they are really able to change the world. Like as I'm looking at a region as complex as ours, MasterCard actually has 5 female CEOs in this region alone. So the Saudi Arabia country manager is a woman, the Levant country manager is a woman, the UAE country manager is a woman, the Bahrain country manager is a woman, and the Egypt office is headed by myself. So I think that to me is a huge indicator of how much gender and inclusion from that perspective is top of mind for us.
So that's really fantastic. Thank you, Ingi. Back to the interesting part, which is the impact on numbers. So back to Andriana. So in Madagascar, after applying several initiatives and policies in the country, would you please give us some highlights and figures and numbers on how the progress in Madagascar that happened in the last years?
Speaking about key figures for women's financial inclusion in Madagascar, thanks to the various projects implemented, the last figures for the account ownership rate are 25% for women versus 27% for men. Second, 18% of men also have mobile money, compared with 20% of men. And finally, according to studies carried out by the Coordination Nationale of Finance Inclusive, attached to the Ministry of Economy and Finance by 2022, 68% of the 250,000 registered saving group will be women, a figure that encourages us to persist our efforts at all levels. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the number is amazing as well. Back to Mehrechane and building on the impact piece as well. Given the effort that is being deployed by the central bank, what are the key highlights as well in Egypt on the financial inclusion and women empowerment that is being taken by the central bank in Egypt?
Okay, basically the key highlights, again, it's capitalizing on digital technology, capitalizing on the infrastructure, modernizing the infrastructure, capitalizing on raising awareness, for the population, be it on the level, again, of individuals or policymakers or private sector and the institutions that we work with. Again, another highlight would be consumer empowerment, because that's very important. That's the other part of the coin. So basically, it should be very responsible, it should be affordable. So basically, working, in an ecosystem aligned, with all the various stakeholders is the key, for reaching any kind of improvement. And as I said, it's a partnership that is not just one institution that is responsible for improving the financial inclusion in Egypt. It's a collaborative effort between all the stakeholders, again, public, private, NGOs, even development partners are always, aligned with us, international institutions. So what we follow is basically when we started off even with financial inclusion, we had to really look at what is the definition for financial inclusion transactional account, who should really come into the numbers, for financial inclusion. And here we had to really ensure that it's enabling the persons to be able to save, transfer, receive transfers, and make payments. And if we look at those, it's basically, it comes with the bank accounts, it comes with post accounts, it comes with the mobile wallets, again, the active ones, it comes with the cards, and we see the cards quite a major, player in also the ecosystem. So now we see with InstaPay, for instance, enabling even somebody who doesn't have a bank account to be able, to receive payments through InstaPay is something really quite transformative. The wallets, I think, the major issues that I have with the wallets, and maybe because Ingi have mentioned it a couple of times, that the wallets and its increase is quite important. It's also how to incentivize people to maintain their wallets active, because we see quite a high number of wallets, yet, the activity rate is not really as high as the uptake. So maybe that's something maybe you can help us to look into it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think the InstaPay app is the fastest adoption in Egypt history in terms of technology. I think this is very fantastic one. Thank you very much, Mehrechane. So back to MasterCard, to the private sector. Ingi, after we see the progress that's happened in financial inclusion and gender diversity, how do you think, or actually, what are the opportunities and the challenges that you are facing in order to promote for the digital transformation and financial inclusion? This first. And the second part of the question, how your strategy is aligning with Egypt strategy 2030, the vision and sustainable development strategy with MasterCard.
Okay.
So it's a two in
No,
one.
no, I hear
It's a
you.
two in one. Yeah.
Maybe a small anecdote, because I have a lot of friends in the room who know me from my past life. So before being a good corporate soldier, I was actually at some point in my life in the world of development, and I was actually the project manager on Egypt 2030.
Yeah, okay.
So I personally have a soft spot for the strategy, and I'm a strong believer in the sustainable development goals and their impact on making life better for individuals and for SMEs nationwide. So generally at MasterCard, we view financial inclusion as a huge focus area for us. I mentioned before, like we are committed to 1 billion individuals, but we're also committed to 50 million SMEs globally to also be financially included. So we understand that financial inclusion has to operate via several lenses. And those are the ones we've been partnering with the government on. So we've been partnering with the government on things around cashless societies. So how can we take something like the new administrative capital and reach a hybrid between the idea of identity and the idea of payment? So have the card that you have as a citizen of this new ACUD be your card by which you enter. It has access controls, but also a payment device. And you're able to actually merge different facets of someone's life on a single card. So that's a project that we're very proud of. I've touched on the wallet ecosystem, and to Mehrechane's point, I really believe that uptake will come as more and more use cases get added, whether those use cases are, for example, installment purchases, or buy now, pay later, or saving goals, or some sort of investment avenue. So by creating more and more use cases around the wallet ecosystem, we definitely foresee a lot of uptake on that front. InstaPay has been a huge enabler, allowing people to actually move money seamlessly from bank accounts to cards or from bank accounts to wallets. So that's also contributing to higher adoption. So generally, interoperability is key. I think that's the key messaging here. So the greater interoperability we have, the greater adoption we would see of financial inclusion across the board. And generally, we find that as an organization, our mission of ensuring that all transactions are simple, safe, and accessible to everyone, everywhere, all the time. So that really aligns well with the financial inclusion agenda of the Egyptian government and the strategy 2030. And when we come to talk about things like decent jobs, for example, as part of a larger SDG agenda, that's why things like digitizing payroll is so important to us, and hence the project we're collaborating on together. So we understand that we cannot sort of take on everything simultaneously. So it's about finding focused interventions that will be high impact and could be scaled and repeated multiple times. That's why we really love, to back to your partnerships point, all the work that's being done by fintechs in the Egyptian ecosystem. And we partner very strongly with them around things around affordable acceptance. How can I make it easier for people to pay with their digital tools in different places nationwide in a way that's seamless and affordable? We partner with fintechs in things around educating individuals and like financial literacy and financial education of segments that normally you would not think of as bankable. So kids at school or farmers, and having like thinking of financial tools and financial literacy that actually marry well to their use cases. So rather than have a generic loan, why not link the loan tenor or the card repayment tenor to something like the livestock life cycle? So it's having cultural relevance and sectorial relevance that I think is crucial for success here. And of course, just making sure that those fintechs have enough support, whether that support is financial, access to resource, access to even linkages with our partnership ecosystem, to ensure that they're able to scale and succeed and grow. So to that end, we have a program called Start Path, which is a MasterCard program, and you could look it up. It has its own website, which basically has all our fintech partners from around the world that we've actually identified and vetted. And we've given them technical capacity building, and we've given them some financing. But more important, we're actually giving them access to our banking partners around the world. So we'd find, for example, a fintech operating out of Italy that does a smart loyalty solution or a personal financial management, and how we can take that company with its success and deploy it as is here in Egypt with banks in our ecosystem, and then take someone like Money Fellows here and then take it to a country like Sri Lanka or Bangladesh who also have a Gamaya culture. So it's about the scalability cross-border. That to us is key to success of the ecosystem and to actually ensuring that we deliver on our financial inclusion objectives.
Thank you very much. I really like the model itself, how you are magnifying the impact by collaborating with other financial institutions and fintechs and even the capacity building piece as well. Thank you very much. So now we understand the strategies, what are the policies that is being adopted by the policymakers and the Central Bank of Egypt, the effort that's being done by the state of Madagascar. But we cannot forget the most important piece in the ecosystem, which is the women entrepreneurs themselves. So back to Andriana. How do you see the African women, businesswomen and women entrepreneurs, and what are the needed supports and support packages to thrive in today's economic conditions and the very fast growing markets now?
Since the promotion of microfinance, it was 25 years ago, various products have been developed to meet the particular needs of women involved in activity such as small business, which are available individually or in groups and often accompanied by a saving account, enabling them on the one hand to increase their funds and consequently their margins for better management of their activities, and on the other to organize risk companies to formalize informal activities and facilitate a registration procedure for new taxpayers. In order to gradually involve women in financial inclusion, you plan, for example, to provide them with a dematerialized bank account to receive payment for the state or make payments, or encouraging young girls, especially in remote areas, to finish their studies with the aim of constantly increasing women's productivity on the job market, which will certainly bring economic opportunity.
Thank you very much. And what is the piece of advice do you give to the women entrepreneurs in Africa?
For young people, for example, future mothers, motivate yourself to finish your studies and the level you deem achievable. This will offer you many opportunities toward your life and, above all, the foundation for full access to financial products and services. For us African women, let's continue to accentuate our presence in all areas, because we will be making a great contribution to the economy by taking on responsibilities at work and devoting ourselves to the family. And finally, on behalf of Madagascar Ministry of Economy and Finance, I would like to congratulate the Egyptian Bank Institute for their initiative and success of this conference. And I hope that after this engineering exchange, we'll have better results to share for the next edition.
Thank you very much. So we're reflecting the same. So the same question. What are, if you would give an advice to women entrepreneurs in Egypt or in Africa? So Mehrechane, what do you think, what is the piece of advice that you give to women entrepreneurs in today's market?
I believe entrepreneurs in Egypt are already equipped with a lot of tools now, especially with digital ecosystem. If I look at like this platform of I Make This, I think it's quite a very successful one. So they are already on the right track. It's just that they have to really continue, to progress the way they are. But for now, I see them really, especially women entrepreneurs, I see them doing like an amazing job. They're really able to be established in every single sector, doing an amazing job. If I remember the first time we went to I Make This, there was only like, I think QNB, POS were there. And now when you go, you find all the banks POSs are available. Women are really willing to get their transfers with InstaPay or wallet or whatever. So if I would say anything, just continue what you're doing. You're just doing great. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ingi?
I would actually say find a good mentor, because a lot of the time, women entrepreneurs, the obstacle is actually confidence or psychological, the fear of I will not succeed or the fear of failure. And a lot of the times, having a good mentor actually helps you overcome those limiting beliefs. So I generally advise entrepreneurs, female or otherwise, to actually find a good mentor. Find someone who's been through the journey before you. Could be someone slightly ahead of you in terms of their own entrepreneurship journey. It could be a coach. It could be someone from the private sector. It could be someone from the regulator. But find a good mentor. That generally does wonders for startups.
Thank you very much. I think it was very, very interesting discussion. We had a lot of valuable insights, and I think we have some actions. And we were very efficient as well. We just finished on time. So thank you very much. In brief, empowering women in Africa is not just strengthening women, it is really strengthening the whole family, the countries, the whole nations, and it has a very, very significant impact on the nation productivity and the continent itself. Thank you very much again, and thank you for the speakers. Thank you very much.
شكراً للمتحدثين بالجلسة على هذه المناقشات القيمة. السيدات والسادة، نتقدم إليكم بالشكر على حضوركم اليوم الأول لمؤتمر المعهد المصرفي المصري Empowering Africa Innovation, Sustainability and Women. ونتوجه بجزيل الشكر للمتحدثين الكرام الذين آثروا جلسات المؤتمر بخبراتهم في مختلف الموضوعات. وندعوكم لحضور اليوم الثاني للمؤتمر غداً. والآن فلتتفضلوا لتناول الغداء. شكراً.